Hello, everyone. This is Jorge Gamboa, and many of my friends also call me George. Welcome to Unstoppable Leaders and the Spanish World Network on Singo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Singo TV app on your respective app stores, iOS or Android devices. And while you download it, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. And Singo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and also in all smart TVs manufactured in the year 2016 and forward. Today we have a very special guest, Matthew Van Gilst, CEO of Callidus Engineering. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And one of the things that I like to do when we first start an episode with somebody is if you can just tell us a little bit of background of who you are and how did you end up leading Callidus Engineering, a little bit of your background story.
Sure. Yeah, so Callidus Engineering is a mechanical and electrical consulting firm, and we design systems for buildings, so heating and air conditioning, plumbing, power, lighting, fire alarm, and so that's kind of what we do for buildings. I have a background in mechanical engineering. Graduated from University of Waterloo way back in the year 2000. And Callidus Engineering started in 2005, at which point two small firms that consistently collaborated with each other merged together to form Callidus. And I was fortunate enough to be able to join in at an ownership level at that point in time when we first opened as Callidus. We were 9 people when we first opened our doors in 2005, and we've just had steady growth. We're about 5 people now with 3 different locations across Ontario, in London, Kitchener, and in Kingston. So it's been a steady growth, and you can imagine that things are a lot different now with 50 plus people compared to 9 people when we first started. So it's been an adventure along the way.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And let's go back in time to that point where you mentioned that 2 companies merged into one. How was the culture? Because when this happens, usually they tend to be a company acquiring the other one, or was more equally, or how was the environment at that time?
Yeah, so the 2 firms had collaborated for about a decade previous to that merger, actually more than a decade. And there were 2 sort of sole proprietor small firms. One specialized in mechanical engineering, one specialized in electrical engineering. So they always worked together on projects. And so then there was a certain point where it made sense to join the firms together to be able to fully leverage opportunities that were available. And so it was really sort of a merger of equals based on the opportunities that were there and the previous history of collaboration. At that point in time, you can imagine, 2 very small firms. It was kind of like a startup culture where you have to get stuff done. Everybody is just working to satisfy the clients, and sort of culture building sort of started at that point when we put the 2 firms together to just start a new adventure, and it was a great opportunity to be able to join in at an ownership level and leadership level where to help set the course of the company moving forward as well.
Yeah, and when you look back at the same time, is there anything that you wish you have known?
There's a ton of things I wish I had known at that point in time. Like to be honest, I look back and think I had no idea what I was getting into. You can imagine, I had 4.5 approximately years of experience at that point in time when we formed the new company. So I had no idea. I had no idea. I had worked in sort of larger companies through co-op terms, but that's different as well. And so yeah, there was things about um, leadership and collaboration and mentoring and client services, all that sort of stuff. I could have benefited from a lot more knowledge. Um, but fortunately, we were just like, we had a good group of people that were gracious and forgiving and collaborative, and we worked through a lot of things at the beginning, and continue to do today, because everybody learns together, and we learn from stumbling, and that's just all part of the journey of developing.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned learning, there is this concept that over time we are learning new skills, and they stack one on top of each other, right? So obviously, I think there's a big number of skills that you learn along your career, from mechanical engineer to now running the company for quite a few years. Uh, how was that learning curve? Was it accidental, intentional? How did you manage to figure out, okay, I need to get better at this skill
Mm.
or the other skill?
Well, once you can imagine starting off your career in a technical side of things, it's all about learning the technical skills to design, right? So applying your engineering knowledge, knowing about the systems that we're designing and implementing. So the first few years were all about that technical knowledge. And then once we formed Callidus, and I'm sort of in an environment where I need to know more about, profit and loss statements and legal side of things, I went out searching for opportunities to learn. And so there was a recognition that more knowledge would help in that area, and found courses through the Canadian Institute of Management, just to fill some knowledge gaps. And fortunately, over the years, there's been a proliferation of leadership training opportunities, right, through podcasts and videos. So I remember early days, a friend of mine who was also taking on leadership roles in the company he was working for. We would get together and watch videos from leaders like John Maxwell and just talk through, well, how does this apply to where we are as well? And so there was an intentional attempt to fill the gaps where they were, that just came from awareness, like, oh, I need to get better, I need to know more, and fill the needs on that side.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned. So you have this kind of peer support body that was in a similar parallel trajectory.
Yes.
Uh, are you still doing that with that person, or that's?
Yeah, not so much on a practical level. Every time we get together, we're still talking about those types of ideas. Yes.
Yeah, and also we hear a lot that beautiful success stories from different people. They teach us a lot of things, but in reality, it's when we fail, when we have to overcome big challenges, that's what we actually learn the most. Can you share one or two of those challenges that really did it for you?
Yeah, I can think of a few things. One would be, first time that I made a significant mistake in an engineering design, and ended up with work that needed to be redone because it wasn't accomplishing. Basically, I had fans that were too noisy, and understanding sort of like the implications of that to the user, and the cost impacts of that to the developer and to us as a firm. It's sort of a mistake that, you know, will live with me for the rest of my time, just as like, oh yeah, you know, there's consequences to our actions, and how we navigate those in terms of owning up to there's an issue here, how do we resolve it, working together, and being collaborative in an approach when there's an issue that needs to be resolved. That was modeled for me by my boss at the time, and that's continued to influence how we do things at Callidus and our interactions with each other. And so it's all about, you know, what do we learn from this challenge, and not blaming or finger pointing, but how do we solve the problem? What do we learn so that we don't make the same mistake again? And then another challenge that comes to mind is really about organizational growth and recognizing when there is a limit on growth, and the importance of leadership alignment. I can remember there's a few years where we were trying to move forward with articulating our values. How do we want to operate as a firm? And really struggling as a group of three leaders to all be on the same page and get behind a common message of this is how we want to operate as Callidus. And in the end, you know, we reached a point where we couldn't get alignment, and so the end solution was an exit from one of our partners, who, you know, was one of the founding partners of the firm. And that sort of a lesson that comes out of there is doing the hard work when there is a conflict that needs a resolution. And I think you know, looking back in retrospect, we could have resolved that sooner and more positively had we been more willing to grapple with it proactively instead of waiting for things to sort of reach a crisis point. And so that's another lesson that sort of sticks with me. If you know that there's something that needs to be resolved, don't wait till next month or next week. You know, get that ball rolling now, because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, definitely. And when all of that was happening, uh, I I guess that there was an impact in the culture of the company, of the people that stayed, right?
Yes.
How was the journey to bring everyone back together again, and start work and continue working as a
Yeah,
united
I
front?
think it was really a matter of um, the coming to a resolution really gave people a breath of fresh air and energy to move forward. And then you couple that with, now we have alignment, put those two things together, and there was an accelerant for our growth. And while, you know, maybe there's some division of how some with alignment in terms of two parties, it was fairly minimal, and in fairly short order, that all became just like, okay, well, you know, we're moving forward from here, and it didn't really continue to have a negative impact. I would say within a year or so of us moving forward. Just there's momentum for forward growth, and this is how we're doing it now. And people got on board.
Mhm. Eh, and part of that is I was looking at your website. The culture in your company is very well articulated. I really like how you do that in your website, and I think you have it in your LinkedIn as well. The culture.
Yes.
How did you came about having those values and living it?
Well, I think at the crux of it is it describes how we were already operating. So we talk about our values of community, ambition, and integrity. And so we went on an exercise of examining how we were operating as a company, with a group of like half a dozen of us or so from across the company in different roles, and so really tried to articulate how are we operating now, and those were the three sort of themes that sort of bubbled to the surface. So community is all about how we work with each other, but it's more than just working with each other. We care about each other. We care about our partners in our projects, whether that's the sub-consultants that we're working with, the architects, the contractors. It's all part of a team that we're all working together for the same outcome. Ambition is all about not being satisfied with our performance, both as individuals and as a company. We can always strive to do better. We say we don't stand still. Don't rest on our laurels. Just keep moving forward and finding new ways that we can do things even better. And then integrity is one of those that it's kind of like of course, right? You don't want to do business with anybody who doesn't have integrity. We say we own our work, we own our projects, and we want to do what we say we will do, and that's how we operate with integrity in our projects and in working with our colleagues. And so those three things are sort of core to how we want to operate as Callidus. And it was a group effort to articulate that, both from the grassroots review of how we are operating, and so now just as a continual, okay, well, we're checking ourselves against those. Are we operating that way? Do we need to make course corrections? Have we steered off course a little bit? And that's also a group effort in terms of evaluation.
Yeah, constantly be aware, right?
Yes.
Be mindful
Yeah.
of them. And I know that you have had clients all across Canada. Can you elaborate a little bit on who are your clients, or what is it that you do a little bit more in
Sure.
depth, so we all know?
Yeah. So we kind of have three major sectors that we're working in. One would be housing, so apartments and condo buildings. And in general, for those types of projects, we're working with developers and sometimes directly for architects in those types of projects. And so that would be, doing, low-rise, mid-rise residential buildings, condo towers up to like 30 stories, kind of generally in Southern Ontario. We have a niche in healthcare where we do a lot of work for diagnostic imaging suites. And that's one of those areas that's brought us all across the country. And we're generally working for a general contractor in that space, where they have a relationship with equipment suppliers that are selling an MRI, say, to a hospital. And so we've gone from St. John's, Newfoundland, all the way to Victoria, BC, up to Whitehorse, sort of covered the whole country with doing MRIs and CTs in, I don't know, probably 50 to 100 different hospitals over the time that we've been doing that. And then a whole range of public institutions, so school boards, municipalities, Government of Ontario, doing various things for their buildings, might be additions or renovations or equipment replacement. Um, that yeah, so life cycle equipment replacement is needed. And then we prepare drawings that are being tendered out to contractors to price and do the work. So those are the three biggest buckets of types of projects that we're working on. And then our actual clients would be a range of architects or property managers, or the owners of the buildings directly themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. And uh, I know that recently, well, or not so recently, you started expanding and having opening offices in other
Yes.
cities. What was that driving factor that you said, okay, let's start expanding and open a physical office in
Yeah.
Kitchener, for
There
example?
was there's sort of two main drivers to that when we first did it. Um, so we started in London, and then we've had some clients that have sort of brought us outside of the London area to different projects. And so we were already doing some work in different locations. Um, but probably the biggest driver is the ambition part of things. We saw that there was an opportunity. We saw that we had capabilities to take advantage of that opportunity. And in particular, for our first venture, one of our employees, Derek Reed, he was sort of eager to go, start something. And we had talked for years, like, well, what could the future look like for him? And we had talked to, like, a branch manager of an office would be something that I could see him taking on. And so for years we kind of charted it out, what would need to happen. And at a certain point, it made sense to go try it, and he was willing to relocate with his family. And so, he went to Kingston to start our office there. And yeah, it's been a big success. And then on top of that success from Kingston, then we're looking for other opportunities. And then so last year we started in Kitchener as well, and it's earlier in its life cycle there of starting something off. But there's lots of opportunity for us, and we've had some good success there with Zam leading our office in Kitchener. And it's each location has its differences, and we really see a great opportunity to attract and recruit new talent in the Kitchener area as well. And so that's also been part of the strategy there of if we can hire more people in Kitchener, that helps our other locations as well. And so, yeah, two different kind of approaches to both of those different expansions.
And as you are going through this expansion, how has your leadership style changed or needed to adapt? Because now you are probably having to delegate more or be more mindful and empower other
Yeah,
people, right?
communication has been a big, I think, one of the biggest areas that we needed to adapt, particularly with the first office. So you can imagine, there's sort of critical mass in London. That's where we started, and then we've opened up this other satellite office in Kingston, and so there's sort of a natural way of communicating things is like, this is Callidus, and the the far remote office is sometimes forgotten about. Or we would have, say, staff meetings where we have 30 people gathered in London in a live event, and then Kingston is maybe video conferenced in, but the systems aren't there to really have good quality. And so there's sort of like a power imbalance even of those two locations. Um, so we really had to make some adjustments to how we do things so that every location is equal from how we communicate, how we talk about things. Not that one's more important than the other as well. So that's been a big change. And an interesting thing about that was um, when the pandemic hit. So we started at Kingston in 2017. So sort of 3 years in, pandemic hit, and when everybody went to go work from home, now we're all on an equal playing field, right? Everybody is remote. We have to rely on our webcams and our chats, and so there was less sort of communication imbalance, and that was a big aha moment for how we have to continue to treat things moving forward as well. So that's been one big change. Um, the the other sort of challenge or adaptation that's need to happen is when to support and when to um, watch, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
Where can I leverage my experience and maybe contacts versus not wanting to overstep, right? And take control. And I think that's definitely an area that there's been, some missteps, or I thought I was doing the right thing, but maybe not, or I thought I was right in not doing something, but maybe I should have been more proactive. And so yeah, I think there's been learning and some ups and downs that way as we've moved into those starting those new offices as well. Yeah.
And along those lines, is there anything that you have had to do to ensure that the culture, the values that we were talking a few minutes ago, stay relevant and at the same level in London than in the other
Yeah, I
offices?
think so. At first, we started like, okay, we want to replicate what we have in London in other locations. Um, and at first, it's almost like we tried to force that too much. The
Mm.
values are really important. We want everybody to have the same values in the same locations, but how those are expressed are going to be a little bit different location to location based on personalities and interests and that sort of thing. So we've actually had a recognition of like, no, they don't need to all be identical. We should recognize and celebrate the differences as well, and still make sure that we've got the same core. Um, Keeping the same core has been we had a good starting point because both say Derek and Zam, who are leading those new offices, originated here in London and lived and breathed and celebrated those values, and so now they're championing them in their new locations. But it's still the same. So it's definitely been an interesting journey that way for trying to be really intentional about creating the same thing, and then maybe backpedaling a little bit about trying to create the same values but not necessarily the exact same actions.
Yeah, and I loved what you mentioned that they were based in London, and you kind of, uh, in collaboration with them, build these opportunities so they can continue developing and further their careers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And uh, changing the topic a little bit, AI seems to be creating a lot of noise everywhere.
Yes.
What is your perspective? How do you think it's gonna impact your field in the near
Yeah,
future?
so we've been dabbling with it a little bit, just from like out of curiosity, and I starting to see some ways that we can leverage it from a training and knowledge perspective. Um, and where we can use it to help generate the early text of a letter or a draft introduction on a report. So we can use it as a productivity tool. And when we're seeing as well where it's starting to come in on the design side of things, where we can, and this is only, we haven't implemented this, but sort of aware of its possibilities of doing parametric design. So we could have different, say, lighting layouts in a space, all generated through AI, taking those capabilities of, okay, we're going to prescribe some metrics, but it could generate multiple different iterations that we can then evaluate and choose. So we're seeing it on our side of things, and then we're only doing the design. On the construction side of things, that's starting to get implemented there as well in terms of construction sites, using it to evaluate, sort of do quality control evaluations of things. So it's a force, I think, that no matter what industry you're in, it's going to have an impact on how you do things. And we should all be, curious and looking for ways to leverage that in our businesses. Because if we're not doing it, somebody else, down the street is doing it, and they just might get a head start on us.
Yeah, it's unnecessary evil to stay competitive,
For sure,
right?
yes.
Yeah. And around that, how have you managed, and not only personally, but also on your company, to keep innovation and learning over time?
So learning over time, I think, is an interesting one for me. It's at a certain point I realized that is like a hobby of mine. Learning is a hobby, I think there's an evaluation called Strengths Finder, and that's sort of when the light went off for me. One of my strengths is learning. I mean, that reflects that this is something that I do in my spare time, and so it's been really beneficial from like personally, and helped me grow from a career trajectory. But that also then infiltrates into the environment of our organization as well. So we're always looking for opportunities to learn better ways to do things, to grow and develop as individuals in our roles, and it's kind of related also to our values there of ambition, right? Not being satisfied with where we're at. How do we get better? Through learning, right? And so where are the areas that we can each learn more to help with growth and performance? So it's kind of been it's part of our culture.
Around that, uh, how have you been, or how successful have you been at leveraging the strengths of different people? And now that you have multiple locations, uh, to kind of support each other and elevate the
Mhm.
strengths as opposed to work on the weekends, on your weaknesses.
Yes. Um, well, so one of the great benefits of the multiple locations has been work sharing. We are constantly work that's for Kingston clients being done in London and vice versa. So that allows us to, like, that's related to ensuring we've got the strengths lined up with projects. Excuse me. The when we think about the needs of Callidus and the needs of our clients, we're trying to keep an eye on and keep an awareness of like where strengths fit well both from a technical side of things, but also from a communication, or okay, we need to develop a new process. Who's got the mind for developing a new process? Who has got the mind for documenting that process? So that I think when we leverage everybody's strengths, we end up, and it makes sense, we end up with a better outcome. And generally, it also happens faster. Because if you're relying on somebody to do something that doesn't fit in their strength zone, it generally becomes one of those, I'll get to that, next week as well, right?
Yeah.
So, in order to do that successfully, there has to be an awareness, right, of who's got what strength, and then also an awareness of what strengths are needed for a given task or project that needs to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And going with that, what do you foresee to be one of the biggest, or some of the biggest challenges that you will be facing in the not so distant future?
One of our biggest challenges always is sort of forecasting. Um, with the projects that we work on and sort of the size of our organization, we generally have let's say a 3 to 6 month outlook of how much work is coming in the door, and how busy we will be. And so it always, there's a challenge there for planning, and for recruiting, when to know it's time to hire on more. And it always feels like there's a leap of faith there, of how things are going to turn out. And that's been we've got more and more systems in place as we've grown to have a better understanding of it. But still, at the end of the day, we've got a limited window into the future. So that's a challenge that we're always grappling with. And then, in virtually all industries right now, it's a competitive labor market, and recruiting people for new roles is a challenge. And so that is one of the pressures that we face right now as well. As I alluded to earlier, our Kitchener office location is intended to help with the recruiting side of things as well, because it's an area that there is lots of opportunity. It's an attractive place to live. So that helps from a recruiting side of things as well. And I think also, our society as a whole has undergone some upheaval over the last couple of years, right? And that has impacted us all as individuals, and it's impacted us as organizations as well. And we're still grappling a little bit of the grappling with the changes, and grappling with the sort of different playing field that we have in industry now. And expectations have changed as well. And like, to be 100% honest, we're still trying to understand, where do we fit as Callidus? How do we want Callidus to operate as we move forward? Thinking about remote work and collaboration, and how we can be, as an organization, supporting to our staff. There's a whole bunch of dynamics there that we're still grappling with.
Yeah, and so true, because right now there's a lot of noise going around, right? From the 4-day work week to
Yes.
that work-life balance and work-life harmony people working at whatever time they want. Uh, have you thought, or I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess I am. Have you thought about hiring remotely at some point? Uh,
Yeah, I would say we've certainly thought about it. We've certainly thought about it. And we right now, none of our all of our staff are in the office to some degree. We don't have any fully remote, except our accounting staff. They're working remotely. But our production teams, on the engineering design side of things, they're all spending some time in the office. And we've been intentional about that. We know there's not everybody's operating that way, and we've seen some. Well, it comes down to sort of conversations that happen while you're in the office. Are we have not been able to replicate that same environment sort of in a fully remote side of things. And so for now, that's how we're operating. And I guess who knows what the future might bring. It seems, depending on the day or depending on the news story, there's forces pulling in both directions, right? Like everybody's got to come back to the office versus, oh no, this is a Pandora's box that's been opened. You should always have, remote people, and we'll never have an office, right?
Yeah.
So it's certainly, an area where lots of different organizations are taking different approaches.
And if there is an advice that you could give to somebody who is just about to graduate from engineering, what would you share with them? What would you tell them?
Well, I think from my perspective, if you're starting off a career in engineering, you've got a head full of physics and calculus and math and all the technical side of things. To a great degree, the success of your career is actually going to be greatly influenced by the non-technical side of things. It's going to be about communication and conflict resolution and empathy. So don't forget about those things. And if school doesn't teach those, so you'll probably need some additional resources to help equip you with those skills as well.
Yeah, that is so true. And my background is computer science, and one of the struggles that I had personally at some point was I even either talk to the computer or I talk to people. Doing both was very difficult. How did you, going back to the beginning of the conversation, how did you start balancing on getting good at doing those two things? Because one is different type of the brains, right, that you're using. Mm-hmm. How did you get there?
Well, I think the nature of the work that we're doing, there is a lot of collaboration. So in order for me to do my mechanical engineering correctly, I have to talk to the architect. I have to talk to the structural engineer. I have to talk with the building inspector who is questioning why I'm doing things. So there really wasn't like you had to get good at those skills as well in order to be successful. So you're kind of in our side of things, you're kind of like forced to at least have that experience where you're going to. I couldn't just stay behind a computer. I was having those interactions, but I think also there was from my perspective, that was an enjoyable part of the job. That there's different elements to the work that I'm doing, and every project has challenges, and you're going to be stretched in different ways. And sometimes it might be the technical challenge, and sometimes it might be a relational challenge. But that's what keeps every week interesting and different. And so that's one of the reasons that I have really enjoyed this field and this career, because it's very unpredictable, and every team is a little bit different. Every project's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we're getting close to the end of the show. We have a few more minutes. What is next for you? What do you see happening to you in the next 5 years, 3 to 5
Hmm.
years?
That's good. That's a good question, George. Um, I think so when I think about where we are as a firm, we've started our office in Kitchener. The next 5 years will really be about firmly establishing ourselves in that market and developing new relationships there. We have a growing workforce over these next 5 years. There's a lot of investment in training and development that needs to happen for us. We've had a lot of new people over the last couple of years join Callidus. And so the secret of our success for the next decade is going to be how much investment and how much success we have in developing our new staff. So that's a big initiative for us for this next while. And I want to just keep on getting better as a leader as well. I think over this last year, there will be over this last year, there's been some challenges about how we can lead better as an organization, and we've got some mentorship in play to help with that. And so, I look forward to continuing to grow as a leader over these next 5 years as well.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. We're gonna have you for the long term
Yeah.
around here. So, is there any question that you have asked yourself that I didn't ask you?
Well, I think we've covered things really well, George, here, in terms of what the journey has been like and what Callidus has been doing these last 18 years that we've been in business. So it's been a good conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Any last words that you would like to share with everyone?
Well, so one of the a quote that stuck with me from reading a book years ago was from a CEO of Kimberly-Clark, Darwin Smith. He said, "I never stopped trying to become qualified for the job," and I think that has sort of been my motto, that I want to continue to invest in myself, to keep on getting better and setting new standards. And I think, I hope at one point that I will, I feel like I'm qualified for the job that I have, so that we can have continued success as Callidus as well.
Cool. So thank you, Matthew, for sharing your journey with us, along with some invaluable insights. And to all our listeners, don't forget to like us, follow us. Remember, as an unstoppable leader, achieving your goals is inevitable. And last but not least, this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it. So thank you, Matthew, and we'll keep in touch, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, George.